Hey everyone, Mike here, and this is the Asus N550, the new 15-inch member of Asus's N family of multimedia laptops. It succeeds the Asus N56, a very appreciated laptop during 2012. And from what I can tell after using it for a while, it has what it takes to become even more popular than its predecessor. This review will show you exactly why, so let's get going. We'll start with the looks. Asus slightly redesigned the N550 and, more importantly, made it thinner and lighter than last year's model. As a result, while this is not as slick as an Ultrabook, it is still a fairly portable 15-incher. The N550 also looks good and feels sturdy, reliable, mainly because aluminum is used for the entire casing. There are some darker sheets of metal on the hood and on the belly, while the silver interior is cast from a solid piece of the same material. Asus took special care of the details as well. There's a backlit logo on the lid, the same beveled edges we saw on the bigger N750, and also the same puncture patterns around the two buttons found above the keyboard. The one on the right is the power button, while the one on the left launches the Asus console, but can also be configured to launch an app of your liking if you want to. While still looking at the interior, you'll also notice the large palm rest with a smooth metallic finishing and the screen's new hinge, but more about it a bit later. All in all, design and build quality wise, the N550 really is a masterpiece. However, there is one thing I didn't like: the lower joint between the sheet of metal on the bottom of this laptop and the silver inner body that leaves out some very sharp edges. You'll find them very annoying when grabbing the laptop. Anyway, let's have a look around the sides. Most of the ports are smartly lined on the left edge with the PSU, the subwoofer's connector, the LAN adapter, full-size HDMI and mini DisplayPort video outputs, plus two USBs and the audio microphone jack. The status LEDs sit on the front edge, just beneath the trackpad, while on the right there's the optical unit flanked by a Kensington lock, a third USB slot and a card reader. Flipping the laptop upside down, you'll notice only some cooling grills in the middle, as the battery is encased and the laptop is not that easy to upgrade. Still, with the right Phillips screwdriver you can get rid of the 10 or so screws holding the entire back panel in place and access all the components inside. You'll notice there is a single hard drive on this unit, two memory modules and two large fans and heat pipes towards the back. Now onto that hinge. It stretches over most of the screen's length and it is very sturdy, keeping that display firmly in place exactly how you'll set it up. And that's a good thing, especially since the N550 comes with a touchscreen that you'll keep poking with your fingers. A very good one, by the way, that reacted snappy and accurate to my touches. Of course, having a touchscreen brings along the glossy glass on top of the actual panel with its reflections in strong light, but since the N550 is going to live most of its day inside, that shouldn't bother you that much. As for the actual panel, Asus bundles a 1080p IPS1 on this laptop, the same they offer on the ZenBook UX51. It's a bright enough display that offers fairly good colors and contrast, so definitely a big leap from the TN screens we've seen on Asus multimedia laptops in the past. Of course, some IPS screens come with light bleeding around the edges, and there is some visible in this particular unit as well. However, you'll probably only notice this when watching movies flanked by black bars, and you'll eventually grow to ignore it. At least I did. On top of that, I should also mention the solid viewing angles and the fact that the screen bends quite a lot on the back. And that makes the N550 a viable laptop not just for desk use, but for more casual scenarios as well. Something I wish I could say about more and more devices in the future. Anyway, enough about that, let's talk about the keyboard. I've reviewed the Asus N750 last week and the N550 bundles exactly the same one we saw on that unit. It comes with the US layout on this laptop, but that will differ from region to region. And regardless of this, the directional and numpad keys are still narrower than the others and way too cramped. You'll also notice that someone at Asus decided to use silver keys on a silver background, so there's very little contrast, and as a result, this keyboard looks dull, even ugly I might say. It doesn't offer the best typing experience either, mainly because the keys feel somewhat plasticky and are a bit too tall for my liking, but it's a good performer nonetheless. Oh, and I should mention that this is backlit and you can adjust the illumination by pressing FN and the F3 or F4 keys. The trackpad is alright, fairly accurate most of the time, smooth and responsive. It supports all kinds of gestures with up to 3 different fingers or when dragging from the sides for those Windows 8 commands. However, like all the clickpads I've seen on Asus machines in these last years, this one can still get jerky and jumpy from time to time. It only happens occasionally, but it's enough to jade the overall experience. Alright, with those already on the table, let's go ahead and press the power button and see what we can actually do with this machine. The N550 runs Windows 8 and boots from cold in about 15 seconds. Our unit, the Asus N550JV, is one of the top configurations that will be available for this laptop, with an Intel Core i7 processor, 16GB of RAM, dual graphics with an Nvidia 750M dedicated chip, and a standard 5400 RPM 750GB hard drive. There's no caching SSD on this particular model we have here, and that's why the entire storage solution will drag down the overall performances of this notebook. You'll find more details about the hardware, the upgrade options, and a bunch of benchmark results in the written review on tlbhd.com. I'll add the link in the description. You should definitely check it out after watching the video. For now, I will tell you that this laptop is overall a beast, even with a slow hard drive. It can deal with anything you might throw at it, from basic tasks like browsing, editing text and pictures, working with documents and so on, all the way to more complex activities like editing videos, writing programming software, etc. And then the N550 can be used for fun, as it is after all a multimedia laptop. Movies are going to look awesome on this punchy IPS screen, and the system can handle all sorts of video files. It can run games as well. That Nvidia 750 chip is not a top performer, but I was able to play most modern titles on 1080p resolution with medium details just fine. More about that in the written review and in another clip that will be published on the channel in a few days, so look for that. Of course, when packing fast hardware inside the thin laptop, this usually leads to overheating. The same happens with the Asus N550, but only when pushing the laptop, when running games or other intensive tasks for hours. In these cases, the area on top of the keyboard, where there's that audio by Bang & Olufsen inscription, gets very hot. So hot that you can't actually touch it for longer than 2 seconds without feeling pain. The same part of the bottom of the laptop gets hot as well. Taking another quick peek at the hardware, you'll notice that those massive heatsinks are placed around there, and when they get hot, they disperse the heat onto the metal frame. So Asus could have done a better job isolating the heatsinks from the exterior, but even so, high temperatures are always going to be part of the story if you want a powerful but sleek machine. I would really be bothered by heat if it would lead to hardware throttling, as I do want such a computer to perform to the best of its abilities if required. Luckily, this doesn't happen here. I'll tell you more about that in the written review. Anyway, I should also add that if you're not pushing the N550, it will run quiet and cool. The fans are constantly spinning though, so this is never completely silent. Speaking about the cooling system, Asus completely redesigned it. Most of the air is sucked from below the laptop, that's why it's important not to cover those grills. It is then blown out through the cuts behind the hinge, which sends most of the hot air towards the back of the laptop, but there's still a fair amount coming towards us, the users. I can't say that the new solution is a lot better than the old one, but there is one thing that I like. On the older N56, the entire left side of the keyboard and palm rest got hot when running games, areas you would always come in contact with. That no longer happens with the N550, that's why I do find the new model more comfortable to use for intensive tasks. Temperatures aside, we should talk about the audio system, a trademark for the Asus N line. Like many other Asus multimedia laptops, the N550 comes with an external subwoofer that will take care of the basses when connected. However, Asus ditched the front-facing speakers hidden behind those punctured grills on the interior and replaced them with some smaller ones placed on the front lower edge of the body, pushing sound towards the desk. There are 4 of them now, and Asus claims this does improve the overall sound quality over their previous generation laptop, but I beg to differ. Even so, the speakers are loud and the sound quality good enough as long as you don't push the volume too high. Once you get past 70%, vibrations and distortions come to play, annoying ones. Hear for yourselves. Bottom point, Asus decided to change the speakers in order to accommodate the sleeker body and the new cooling system. And while the N550 is still a good performer, for sure among the best in its class, it can't really stay next to the older N56 when it comes to the overall audio quality. Those being said, the Asus N550 is not the perfect multimedia laptop, but for the money you're certainly getting plenty. The N550JV with the i7 processor will start at around 1100 euros over here, while the top configuration with the same processor and the 256GB SSD instead of the slow hard drive we had on this unit will get to 1500 euros. For updated pricing information, you should see the written review though. Alright, before we get to draw the conclusions, there are a few other things I have to add. First, the N550 is impressive when it comes to battery life. There's a 59 Wh battery inside this unit, and corroborated with the Haswell platform and the hybrid graphics system, allows this unit to last 5+ hours on a charge if used lightly. During everyday use though, with some browsing, movies, music, test editing and so on, I got around 4 hours with the screen at 50%, Wi-Fi on and Power 4G battery saving mode selected, and that's not bad at all for such a machine. Connectivity wise, the N550 offers all the things you might need, with Bluetooth, Gigabit LAN and fast and reliable wireless. However, support for the 802.11ac standard would have been nice and would have made this laptop more future-proof. There's also a webcam on this laptop with dual microphones, decent for occasional Skype calls, but far from impressive. Last but not least, it's worth knowing that the Asus bundles the N550 with a bunch of pre-installed software and services. Some of them could be useful, like the free cloud storage offered for 3 years or the splendid Audio Wizard and Tutor applications, all easily accessible from the Asus console interface. There are several others you should uninstall if you want to make your laptop snappier. More about those in the written review. In fact, there are plenty of other things covered in the post, as I've tried keeping this video as short as possible. Even so, we've passed the 10 minutes mark, so it's time to end. Before drawing the line though, if you like this clip, do not forget to hit the thumbs up button and share it on Facebook, Twitter, Google+ and all the other services. That really helps me a lot. Those being said, overall the Asus N550 is a good laptop. Asus made their 15-incher sleeker and lighter than before and added an IPS touchscreen to the mix, while not sacrificing power or the battery life. There are of course things that could have been done differently, like the redesigned audio and cooling systems and to some extent the keyboard and trackpad. But even so, for the money, you'll have a hard time finding anything better right now. And that pretty much wraps this up. Bottom point, I like the N550 and I do think it's a worthy successor for the Asus N56. But I'd love to know, what do you guys think about this laptop, what do you like about it and what do you hate? So leave your replies below, I'll be around to reply and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks again for sticking by.